I love a game with a distinct art style. That's one of the best ways to get me interested in a game. So when I first saw the Steam listing for Subway Midnight, it immediately grabbed my attention. Originally published in 2021, Subway Midnight is a puzzle horror game where you investigate the deaths of several ghosts while avoiding the clutches of a mysterious enemy. The Steam description is pretty bare bones. Board the train, run away from a weirdo, solve some puzzles, make friends with some ghosts, try not to become a ghost yourself. Because of that, there's really not a ton to say here, we kinda just have to jump into the game. It opens up with blaringly loud audio, as most games nowadays do. Unfortunately, unlike most games, it has no settings menu to adjust things like this, so I had to manually go into my volume mixer to stop the noise before I ruptured an eardrum. The game begins with a girl sitting alone on a subway. As soon as she stands up and begins to move forward, she's interrupted by a green ghostly apparition who gives a friendly wave before vanishing through the wall. Visually, this game looks freaking great. All the characters are 2D while in a 3D environment, which I really love. They blended everything really well, probably thanks to the stationary perspective. There's a film grain over the entire screen, which really helps to blend the mediums even more smoothly. The girl moves to the next cart where it's revealed that she's being followed. We can't make out what this stalker looks like quite yet, but the menacing sound effects and harsh red lighting indicates something sinister. The girl spawns on the ceiling of the next room, inverting the controls. For right now, this is pretty easy to adjust for and make progress, but it does emphasize something that I'm not too big a fan of. The controls are super loose, and you slide around on the floor as if it's made out of ice. That adds to the tension of chase sequences the first time that they happen, but it quickly just gets annoying instead of scary. Each of the subway carts in this intro section have a gimmick, but nothing actually poses a threat. You really just have to walk forward and ignore your surroundings. That being said, the atmosphere here is great each and every time, and it's added to as the stalker draws even closer. Eventually, the girl notices the stalker behind her, running away while finally revealing its appearance to the player. Just look at this thing. It's super weird and I love the face. We get a title card and the game completely switches perspectives to a new character. Their name is Liz and they're in a subway station all alone. The game looks absolutely gorgeous here with some detailed reflections and a wide open space to explore. It's probably my favorite section in the game visually. There isn't really anything to look at, but what's there looks great. While exploring, I found that the camera was pretty frustrating to deal with. It's attached to your character, which can create for some great claustrophobic moments when you're on the subway, but not so much in the more open areas. The camera constantly phases through walls and gets blocked by items in the foreground, making it difficult to figure out where you're going. If you don't explore, this won't be too big of an issue most of the time, but there are a few scenes throughout the game where it is a really frustrating detriment. Liz heads further into the station, picking up what appears to be a tackle box before buzzing past the gate and approaching the tracks to wait. On the other side of the platform is the stalker from the prologue, sporting a toothy grin that doesn't even remotely faze Liz, who gives a neutral wave before turning away. The subway violently arrives at the station, with both parties entering. There's a missing poster tacked to the wall for one Julia H. Coney, last seen on this very subway. Liz moves on, traversing multiple carts with progressively more missing posters plastered to each one. Some doors require button presses to open, which I think is funny since the animation looks like Liz is just bonking it with their face. Bonk. To interact with things, you need to use the spacebar, which the game never tells you. The game doesn't really tell you any of the controls, you just have to figure it out for yourself while pressing buttons until something works. It's simple enough that this isn't much of an issue, I just wish that we could have had an unobtrusive button prompt in the corner of the screen or something, just to kind of cut out the middleman. We finally get a real puzzle in the next area. There's a button insert sitting on a box that can be placed into several different outlets throughout the cart. Liz first inserts it into the outlet on this platform, illuminating a button that allows the platform to raise upwards. There's a secondary button insert here that Liz then grabs. Once both are collected, they can be used on either side of the door to open things up. Liz quickly comes face to face with the ghostly apparition of Julia, who sinks through the floor. Liz gives chase, tracking Julia down into a misty room full of fish and anchors. Can I talk to you from down here, or do I need to get myself a button? I think I have to get a button. Well, let's look at you a little closer. Okay. What just happened? It appears we can die in this game. There's a shark roaming the floors that'll instantly kill Liz. Another platform with an outlet sits near the entrance of the room, so Liz slides across the floor, gathering one of the inserts and using it to raise the platform. When they interact with Julia, a cutscene will play. The game immediately transitions to another cart where a happy Julia holds their newfound fish friend. This is our introduction to the main goal of this game. There are 3 endings, one bad, one good, and one secret. To get the good ending, Liz needs to help out each of the ghosts that they meet in different ways. Sometimes this is something super easy, like picking up the obvious item and handing it to the character, while other times it's really elaborate nonsense that you can sometimes only find out through sheer luck. I'll get into more detail about each as we go along. In the next cart, Liz runs into a child holding a bear. They immediately get startled and drop the poor thing. One of the carts is chock full of passengers. In the back of the cart, the green ghost from the prologue is sound asleep. There are more wanted posters scattered throughout the rest of the carts, but Liz doesn't have time to take a look with the stalker making their presence known. The rooms have all been quite ominous and supernatural in certain ways, but this is the first one that doesn't even try to look like a subway cart. The chase is still happening, with Liz having to press these colored buttons in the correct order. This puzzle is really just trial and error, which is something that you'll need to get used to because it happens a lot. I'm not sure why the developer relied so much on this kind of puzzle, but it definitely gets old fast. There aren't any indicators of which buttons to press in which order, so you really just have to press randomly until you find the code. If you die, you just start the room over and try again. The code remains the same, so it's not much of a setback, just an annoyance. This would be frustrating enough on its own if the game was programmed correctly, but that would make things just a little bit too easy, wouldn't it? Whenever you have to interact with a row of buttons, there's a chance that the game will disagree with the button you selected. Are you clearly standing in front of the pink one? Well, the game decided you pressed the blue one a foot to your left. So it's time to start all over. Liz runs into the kid, who manifests 2 gates surrounded by a chain while the stalker is right behind. You can interact with the chain to raise the gates, but the second you let go, they fall down without giving you a chance to pass. The way I got past this was by continuing to hold the interact button after walking away from the chain, which makes absolutely no sense to me. At least we got to see the names on the missing poster. Kiki and Colin Thomas. Oh boy, another trial and error button puzzle! The next room is actually one of my favorites. There's a faceless clone of Liz on the other side of the room that will mirror all of your actions. When Liz sidesteps the clone to reach the door, it stops mirroring and begins chasing. It's a super simple but cool scare, and it was way more intense than either of the trial and error chases. Next, we get a cutscene with Kiki. I adore the facial expressions in this game. It adds some comedy to balance some of the spookier aspects. Now, initially I thought I royally screwed up and wasn't able to help Kiki, netting me the bad ending. But we also haven't seen Colin. The storyline of those kids isn't over yet. The next room is filled to the brim with monitors, servers, and other assorted devices. A wanted poster attached to one reads the name Jessica Simmons. The doorway at the end leads to a monochrome room with a large monitor labeled Input. When Liz draws closer, 3 icons flicker onto the screen. One is green, one's yellow, and one is pink. Underneath are 3 buttons, each with an associated LED. The 2 on the left are red, while the one on the right is green. When you press the buttons, the respective icons will change. At first, I threw in some random nonsense, learning that getting the answer wrong throws you into a random room where the only consequence is taking an extra 15 seconds to walk forwards. Let me walk you through my thought process for solving this puzzle. Pressing the right button turned the LED from green to yellow, and putting the original icon back up didn't change the color back. I figured that this must mean I should match the icons to the LEDs. The LEDs all turned yellow, so I made each of the icons yellow. After checking my answer, the 3 LEDs all changed colors, with the left one being green. So that probably means that the icon on the left was the correct color, and that I'll have to use trial and error to figure out the rest. I should mention that the pressing the wrong button glitch is especially bad in this section. I went through a few more rounds trying different combinations to see what colors I should activate until I finally tried out one of the blue icons, and the LED turned blue instead of green or red. I guess that means that the green LED was not an indicator of the correct icon. So maybe I should try all blue since it gave me a different result. Unfortunately, the game decided that I had tried too many times and kicked me out of the room and into the next area. I learned later that making each icon blue was the correct choice. Selecting these unlocks a blue room with a disc inside. After that super duper fun trial and error puzzle, we get another super duper fun trial and error puzzle. Buttons look different, but it's the same exact thing as the first chase. The only big difference is that in between some of the areas, there are lasers that you have to dodge. The camera is still positioned near the floor, making it way more difficult to tell where Liz is and where the murder lasers are. The gaps are big, so you can still get by without too much trouble. At the end of this room, there are an assortment of computers that Liz turns off, activating one larger computer in the back with a thin slot. They insert the disc. Jessica and Liz follow a fog-covered path, finding their way to a glitching object. Seems that Jessica collects amiibos. We found ourselves a gamer. Good thing this video's been sponsored by Gamersups. Gamersups is a company that makes tons of different delicious products, from their energy formula to things like tea, energy bars, and ramen. Their energy formula has 0 calories, is keto friendly, and is full of essential vitamins. They have both caffeinated and caffeine-free versions of their flavors, meaning you can use it for a boost in the morning or to wind down with something tasty at night. If you have any interest at all and want to directly support the channel, use code BENAGAIN at checkout to get 10% off your entire order. The following room is full of paintings, with the artist standing silently at the back. Each work appears to be a self-portrait of some kind. The artist will be in most of the rooms for this section, silently watching Liz. This room is, you guessed it, another trial and error puzzle. This one's actually cool though. Liz spawns on a small box with 2 buttons, one for left and one for right. Pressing them will rotate some of the buttons down the line. There's a certain position for each box that will manifest a floating platform, and that will allow Liz to continue. You need to figure out which button is associated with each platform to make it to the end of the hallway. As you solve puzzles, you'll probably notice these paint buckets sitting around. To help this next ghost, you need to collect all of them. This can mostly be done by keeping an eye out and exploring, but some, like this orange bucket, require you to just break the established rules of the puzzle and pray that you don't die while going for it. Another kind of odd one is in this room, where the only way to get the green bucket is to realize that you can pick up the flowers before collecting every single one. Then we have the purple room. This area is filled entirely with invisible patrons at an art gallery that you'll have to bounce off like pinball bumpers to make it towards the end. To get the bucket, you need to examine each colored painting in rainbow order while dealing with the stupid invisible maze of people. It's tedious, it's more trial and error nonsense, and if you accidentally hit the interact button at all, you have to completely start over. At least we finally get to see the friendly green ghost again. So far, the game has remained charming, visually beautiful, and fairly entertaining, but these puzzles are just getting more and more irritating to deal with. There's no critical thinking here, it's just clicking buttons until you figure out what the developer wants. I'd like to use another game with a similar puzzle as an example here. In The Sandman by Uri, you have to traverse an invisible maze. It starts off as trial and error, but after you make it through for the first time, you're able to mark the floor with a colored liquid so that you can retrace your steps more easily in the future. You just collected several buckets of paint, so why not let Liz mark their path since the player has to navigate this maze so many times? If we need to save them for the ghost, there's plenty of other ways to leave a trail so that you still need to figure out the correct order, but in a far less frustrating environment. Liz activates all the paintings in the correct order, earning the paint bucket and moving on. The camera stays in this cart, revealing that the stalker is still following us. Liz follows the ghost to the end of the hallway, ending up in a room full of crumpled papers and a black canvas. It seems our new friend is going through art block. Liz notices a bouquet of flowers in the trash, recognizing it as the same one the artist was given at the gallery. Liz picks them up, initiating a conversation. At the very end of the hall, we finally see the ghost admiring their painting. This entire time, the game has never told us their name, but I actually saw it when I messed up this section originally. When you fail to help the artist, there's a single missing poster labeling them as Victoria. The next area starts with a familiar missing poster, that being Kiki and Colin. Since we met Kiki earlier, this must mean we're helping out Colin this time. Colin sits in a room alone, playing a game on a small TV. Liz hops on the couch, initiating the scariest part of Subway Midnight. Colin's game. We take a first-person perspective in a low-poly horror world. There are some gems scattered around a small house alongside some surprises. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This section controls like garbage. There's massive input delays, you're even more slippery than in the normal world, and you can't strafe while walking forwards. It's awkward, clunky, and very irritating. This simultaneously adds and detracts from the game. On one hand, when there's a threat nearby, not having as much control as you might want definitely adds to the tension. On the other hand, simple navigation becomes a chore. After finding 4 gems, Liz is able to move down the staircase and explore the rest of the building. After looking around the basement, Liz is abruptly taken out by this thing. They respawn in the first room, noticing that the creature is now sleeping on the top of the bunk bed. Liz takes this opportunity to sneak out of the house and explore the nearby woods. There are 2 gates that require 8 gems here, one of which has a letter hidden behind it. This item is what we need to help out Kiki and Colin. Liz finds the other gate, entering the subway and being attacked by a virtual version of the stalker. Liz looks up, finding Colin nowhere to be seen. I really like this section. Even though the controls were frustrating, it was without a doubt the scariest section in the entire game. There was always tension, especially because of the spooky atmosphere, and I never really felt safe, even though from my understanding, you can't actually die in this area. In the next cart, Liz finds another wanted poster, this time for Benson T. Reeves. There's a massive theater advertising a show all about Benson's life, referring to him as Benny. Looks like Benson is the green ghost that we kept seeing in the other sections of the game. Liz enters the show area, sitting down and watching Benson's performance. The crowd is absolutely eating it up, laughing at the start and crying as the story gets progressively more sad. The production shows Benson passing out after a terrible day at work, only to be woken moments later to repeat the cycle. After days upon days of this nightmare, Benson meets the stalker on the subway and is clearly uncomfortable with the interaction. The curtains close with the ghost of Benson materializing to take a bow. The crowd erupts into applause, although Benson still seems slightly unsure of how things went. Liz grabs the bouquet of flowers from earlier, tossing it to the stage and making Benson's day. This smile is so adorable. You can't help but wish only the best for our little performer here. The segment is really short but really sweet. Liz meets the final ghost pal in the next room, a young child in a onesie next to their pet dog. My favorite mechanic here is that you can pet the dog as you progress, which is needed for the good ending. There are several doors in this area which Liz explores one by one. This is when I was absolutely done with the game. You have to explore 5 different rooms. I don't think I had fun in a single one. Everything was so tedious and confusing that I legitimately needed to give myself a brain break in the middle. This room requires you to randomly navigate conveyor belts until the camera is in a position where you can find the path to the door. This room is covered in exploding eyes that will blow you up if you stay in their line of sight for too long. You still have the stupid slidey ice physics, and it seems almost randomized how long it'll take for each cluster of eyes to detect you. The map is comprised of many blocks to hide behind, which obscures your path, leading to many abrupt deaths. Oh, there's no floor there. Come on, man. The next room is pure static, making it incredibly difficult to tell what's going on. Liz is this little speck in the very middle of the screen. You're supposed to find the door in the room and get there before you're swarmed by these other little specks. Usually the doors are just straight ahead, so I ran up there only to be caught by specks from all sides. Next, I tried looping around the bottom edge, which worked until I fell into a random hole and died. After a solid 7 minutes of wandering around like a crazy person, I tried walking straight ahead again, and this time the enemies were slower than me and I was able to get to the door. I have no idea why it was different this time, but honestly, I'm just glad it's over. This room has a bunch of doors that randomly connect to each other. Liz has to find the exit before this slime cube thing ends the game. Somehow the controls are even more slippery here, and the slime can move faster than Liz, making it difficult to outmaneuver. This room is pitch black except for the occasional fraction of a second when light will appear, revealing a monster curled up on the floor in a chaotic pattern. Liz has to use this little, infrequent window of time that the room is illuminated to try and navigate to the door. Now let's just sit down for a moment and think about what all 5 of these rooms have in common. Conveyor belt pathways that are impossible to see the end of until it's too late to turn back, pillars obscuring the floor in a deadly maze, a storm of static that seemingly has no rhyme or reason when choosing a safe path, randomized teleporting doorways that can instantly kill you, and a pitch black maze that only reveals itself for a fraction of a second at a time. Trial and error, over and over again. That's all this game really is gameplay-wise. Liz exits the final room, running into the kid and their dog. From here on out, I'll be discussing the ending, so please skip to the timestamp on screen and in the description if you just want to hear my final thoughts on the game. Liz finds a cart with all 6 missing posters on the walls. If you helped out each of the ghosts, all 6 will be lit up with different colors and you will get the good ending. Unfortunately for me, I only got half on my first playthrough, so let's go ahead and take a look at the bad ending. Liz stumbles upon the character from the start of the game, this time in a ghostly form. This is Cassandra, who promptly runs away. As Liz gives chase, the stalker catches up to the two. They run through the same carts as at the start of the game, finding Cassandra's body laying in front of a locked door. What a lackluster ending. The buildup of tension was really well done, and seeing the true face of the stalker was really cool, but then they just throw a hand down on Liz's shoulder and we get a screen that says bad end? Really? Not only is this a mediocre ending, but it's also required. Remember that letter in Colin's game? Liz is supposed to give it to Kiki way earlier on, before you can even pick the letter up. That means that your first ending is guaranteed to be the bad ending. The game doesn't tell you this, but that letter stays in your inventory between playthroughs, meaning you have to hand it over after replaying the game. To be fair, the game does something good here by only making you replay the segments that you failed to fully complete. But I played the entirety of Colin's game twice before realizing that the letter carried over and that I was completely wasting my time. The one piece of information we can gather from this ending is related to Cassandra. The final chase was identical to the one at the start of the game, and Cassandra's body was at the end. Since Liz's newfound friend was already a ghost during their meeting, we can make the assumption that this stalker is behind Cassandra's death, and by extension, the rest of the cast. Everyone was uncomfortable when interacting with the stalker. We even got to see Benson on the subway acting out the discomfort live. Let's see if we get any more information from the good ending. This time around, Liz is able to give the letter to Kiki. The siblings are reunited, which is the final thing needed for the good ending. Helping all the ghosts earns Liz a key that can be used at the end of the chase. Liz is now dead, but the game abruptly changes to a completely different scenario where Cassandra is alive again. The key is somehow here now, allowing her to escape and enter the next room. The walls are plastered with even more missing posters, this time of the stalker, Eleanor A. Birch. Cassandra keeps running, locating the exit and escaping the subway. Eleanor is stopped by the corpses of her past victims, each far more decayed than before. They tear her apart. At least Benny's here to give them a smile and a thumbs up before opening the door. I like this ending a lot more, but I'm also incredibly confused by it. Liz and Cassandra were dead. Was that key somehow transported to the past so that Cassandra could use it? Did Cassandra die right before Liz got to the subway, hence why they ran into each other on the way out? If so, how did Eleanor get off the subway so she could wait with Liz at the very start of the game? Not totally sure what happened here, but there's one more ending that may be able to shed a little bit more light on the story. The third and final ending in the game is the secret ending, which requires you to start the game up at midnight. Unfortunately for me, it is 9:30 in the morning, but you can easily just change your computer's settings. As long as it's within the hour of midnight, you can get this ending. The game opens on a shot of a completely new character wearing a skeletal mask of sorts. They're clearly a ghost floating and phasing through the walls. The game then transitions back to Liz, who plays through the game exactly as before. There are rooms scattered throughout this playthrough that are completely black and white, which indicates the rooms that Liz needs to perform a special action in. This room with the 3 outlets and 2 buttons is exactly the same as before, except this time Liz can examine the TV in the corner. This takes us to an extra scene where the masked ghost scares Eleanor away from Julia. Every time Liz completes a special action involving that mask, we get another scene of this ghost preventing one of the murders. At the end of the subway, Cassandra is still dead, and she disappears very quickly. We see that the lock in the final cart is covered in missing posters of a different person, Jacqueline Birch. The cart that revealed Eleanor's name is now covered in posters of both Birches. Eleanor is sitting down watching a TV. The masked ghost sits down next to her, removing the mask to reveal that they are Jacqueline. We take control of Eleanor, exiting the subway alone. Outside, everyone is alive and well. The only missing poster is that of Jacqueline. Eleanor leaves, bidding farewell to Jacqueline's ghost. From what I can gather, Eleanor lost Jacqueline and was so racked with grief that she began taking the lives of others instead. I immediately assumed that Jacqueline and Eleanor were sisters, but a lot of people online believe that Jacqueline is Eleanor's daughter. But that does not matter, because all the victims are safe now. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this game. It's visually and aesthetically one of my favorite pieces of media right now, but the gameplay itself was incredibly tedious, dragging on quite a bit with all of the trial and error. It was cool trying to piece together the story myself, but I still don't fully understand what happened. Subway Midnight doesn't give you any directions, which I personally don't really like. I know a lot of people love that sort of thing, so I would definitely recommend giving it a shot if that sounds like you. If you like games comprised entirely of exploring the same areas until you eventually find something that progresses things, you should absolutely give Subway Midnight a shot. If not, I would still recommend you try it out. Just have an ending walkthrough up for your second playthrough so you don't have to repeat sections over and over again. If I ever replay this game, that's how I think I'll get the most enjoyment out of it. I hope to see you all again. Have a great rest of your day.